Hello gamers, it's Nyce. I hope everyone in Tamriel is having a nice day. Today I want to give a review of The Elder Scrolls Online in 2024. This MMO has been my main game for about 10 years now, and while this review will be all-encompassing of the game as a whole, it will be from the perspective of someone with PvP as their core game loop. And while I will try to speak on the new player experience, please understand that this review is from a veteran of the game. The Elder Scrolls Online, or ESO for short, recently celebrated their 10-year anniversary and had the launch of their game-changing new chapter, Gold Road. This video will not only focus on the Gold Road chapter, but the state of ESO as a whole. From critiques to praises, you will get nothing but honesty from me. I'll also have some fun PvP footage for you guys to watch in the background. I put a lot of time into this video, so I truly hope you all enjoy. Now, with all the disclaimers out the way, let's discuss this MMORPG and if you should play in 2024. Let's start with the history and give an overview of the content. The Elder Scrolls Online is an action combat MMO released in 2014 and was first marketed as a large-scale PvP game. In fact, its first paid DLC was a new PvP area in Imperial City. The game has since gotten away from this focus, of course, but more on that later. The game is now more or less dependent on the IP of the Elder Scrolls name and practically selling itself as a Skyrim Online. Things have, of course, changed a lot since launch. I remember watching footage of outnumbered PvP in Cyrodiil from content creators such as CypherPK and instantly was enthusiastic about the concept of winning MMO fights against the odds. And yes, that CypherPK. Yeah, we had him first, and for years at that. Now, ironically, the developers have to pay him to play ESO. Leave a like or I might have to go to Fortnite as well. The game has grown and changed so much over the years. I won't bore you with every update and change, but the game has stayed strong over the years for reasons that I will discuss shortly. And honestly, while we don't know the true population, we do know that lack of population isn't one of the issues that ESO suffers from. ESO is available on PC and on both consoles, including the previous gen consoles. Being available on console is a big draw as there aren't too many console options until the market gets thrown in Liberty and New World in a couple of months. ESO to me has never been a mainstream MMO, if you will. You don't often hear it brought up by the big MMO content creators, and not everyone is a fan of the combat, but those who love it truly love it and has both an awesome community and fan base. In fact, most of my channel's growth and content has been revolved around the Elder Scrolls Online. But should you play ESO in 2024? And furthermore, exactly how has this MMO managed to stay thriving and stick around for a decade? Well, they, like a couple of their competitors, realized something very important, and that is the fact that content is king. More on that in a second. But first, I would like to thank Moano. If you're enjoying the audio of today's video, just know that it was all done with my new PD100X microphone. I have been loving the Moano brand for a while, and if you watched any of my videos in the past 2 years or so, or my streams, you know that I always use a Moano microphone, whether that be for gaming, live streams, podcasts, or recording videos like this. I've always gotten compliments on my microphone, even with it just being a $50 microphone. Moano noticed that I was already using their product, so they sent me a new free one. And you guys know I don't do sponsors, but this one was so natural and easy because this new microphone, the PD100X, is literally just a better version of the microphone that I was already using. It's a dynamic microphone, which means it helps not to pick up every sound in the house. I'm a dad and constantly have the kids loud upstairs even as I record this video right here, and I notice minimal background noise right now. They also sent a cool audio mixer with the background noise reduction, voice changer, and more, so I can't wait to start using these during stream. Check the link in the description if you want to know more about them. Now, with that out the way, let's discuss how the Elder Scrolls Online has stuck around this long. Like I said, it's because they realize content is king, and this is something we can tie back into the new player experience. I've always said on live streams when someone asks me if they should try ESO that I truly envy them. It's a little hyperbolic, but a player starting ESO today has nearly infinite content. Well, a ton of content, right? To say the world is massive is an understatement. Look at the amount of content in each of these zones on screen, and just me hovering over these zones doesn't exactly show that. But with the massive size of most of these zones, you can imagine what's to be discovered. Each of these zones themselves, which is referred to as overland content, is packed with so much. A couple of delves, exploration, maybe a trial, various cities, different mobs, villages, world bosses to defeat, lore books and sky shards to discover, and of course, the bread and butter of ESO, questing. Just a bunch of quests everywhere. The questing in ESO is said to be among the best in the genre, and Zenimax does not cut any corners and has full voice acting. A very impressive feat considering the amount of quest and content the MMO boasts these days. Now, let's talk about a potential criticism of all this. I'll be completely honest, like I said, I am no overland quester. I am a PvPer. I personally find the difficulty of overland content non-existent and just not engaging. Now, don't get me wrong, the quests are great if you're into the lore, but the challenge of the enemies doing one light attack every 3 seconds and one heavy ability you gotta dodge every 7 seconds or so just puts me to sleep sometimes. And I get it, the game is going for a different kind of audience, and not every game needs to be an Elden Ring difficulty level challenge or have the mechanics of the hard mode veteran trials, right? But being able to be AFK or never truly feel threatened in the open world makes the content for me not personally engaging. Does that mean the questing is bad? Definitely not. I'm just saying that for me, I wish it was more challenging or that I was given a sense of danger just a little more often, you know? And I just want to feel like my build decisions actually mattered. However, if you enjoy PvE content, lore, a good quest and such, then I think the amount of content ahead of you will truly occupy your time for the foreseeable future and impress you. I think the best way to summarize it is, if you've never seen an episode of The Simpsons and you decide to sit down and start binging it from season 1 right now, something like that, if you will, like that's how much content is ahead of you. It can seem overwhelming as a new player, but you truly do not have to do all of this content to level or even progress the game per se. It's more so just there to be available for you at this point. You can literally skip it all. But especially if you want to take your time, you can essentially visit each zone and any zone comfortably at basically any level these days because of how scaling works. Something else worth noting is that The Elder Scrolls Online is perhaps the most solo-friendly MMO in the genre. A little ironic being that the core of the MMO genre, like the whole point of it was, you know, social aspects in a shared world and working together with other players. But whether or not you agree with the ideology, one can't deny how great of an experience this MMO is for the solo player. From great solo arenas like Maelstrom Arena and Vateshran Hollows, or technically even Ethereum Archive potentially, to the fact that you can literally become a master crafter and never need a player for anything. That's kind of a thing with ESO, is one character is the hero, they're everything and don't pretty much need anybody else for the most part when it comes to just most things in the world, such as crafting and some overland content. This is one of those games where you are led to believe you are the hero or the main character. For most players, I feel like that will make them feel right at home with the main story and questing, and similar to other RPGs, this logic also leads itself into player builds. One character can have amazing self-healing while being tanky, while still outputting a lot of damage. This is obviously possible in PvP, as you can see from the footage in the background. So we've established that the developer of ESO, Zenimax, understands that content is king. I think at one point we were getting new PvE DLC about every 3 months or less, including new zones, dungeons, trials, you name it. But there's also a dark reality that needs to be discussed, and I know a lot of you were waiting for me to get to this. As I said, I'll continue to give my honest thoughts of the game, and sometimes that means there will be compliments, and sometimes that means the feedback may seem a little harsh. As someone who logs into this game as a PvPer, I, like many, feel neglected, unwanted, not valued, an afterthought. A non-factor in decision making, the red-headed stepchild of Tamriel, banished to Cyrodiil, and overall, just disappointed in the lack of support from the development team. The PvP player base in The Elder Scrolls Online has been so neglected that even PvE mains either look at you with sympathy or they look at you like, can you not take a hint? The Elder Scrolls Online has various forms of PvP, whether that be dueling, battleground arenas, Cyrodiil, or Imperial City. Imperial City was among, if not the first paid DLC of the game after it released in 2014, if I recall correctly. A PvP, or rather PvX area, where you had the threat of players in an instance environment like Cyrodiil, but also more PvE focused content as well. Since then, the zone has been essentially forgotten or made obsolete, aside from a few unique monster sets that have a 100% drop rate so that people don't have to stay down there more than they want to. We also haven't gotten a battleground or arena map in 6 years. I'm gonna say that again. We haven't gotten a battleground map, just a battleground map in 6 years. And I think that's after they were introduced. It has been such a long time since PvP has received a major update. Imperial City hasn't, nor have Battlegrounds, nor has Cyrodiil, the main gameplay loop for PvP and the Alliance War. Imagine if you started playing ESO because you liked endgame difficult trials and dungeons, and Zenimax just didn't give you a new dungeon for years. It's actually mind-blowing that players have stuck around this long if your main interest is PvP. But maybe that's just a compliment in disguise to show how fun the combat and PvP engagements must be sometimes, that players would actually stick around for this. The developers have stated that they haven't updated PvP at all because they want to focus on the performance issues that plagued the game first. Yeah, and after all this time, that seems like a poor excuse. Even though performance isn't consistently great, it's improved a lot on PC and A. At least a lot from what it was, outside of maybe primetime hours in the main campaign when ball groups are faction stacking in Cyrodiil. It's, however, not consistent for everyone, especially in that main PvP campaign. But this is where players get upset. Remember all that content I showed you and discussed with you and we were hovering through the map? That means they rather sculpt out entire new zones, dungeons, I'm talking quest lines, NPCs, instances, delves, etc. Do all of that. Do all that work, all that content, and not even throw an enjoyer of PvP, a little tiny battleground map. Just a little battleground map, just a little small arena that can honestly be so half-assed and cut from an area of the overland map. I get it. Maybe you don't want to touch Cyrodiil because you're too afraid that you would end up making performance worse. But man, not even a battleground map, not even a revitalization of the Imperial City DLC, but I digress. The game's PvP is very fun, though it has its issues, but we'll save that for another time. And obviously, there is a reason people have stuck around this long, right? So obviously it's not all bad. I just wish Zenimax would give some love to their PvP customers. I'm not saying it has to be 50-50 with PvE, but can we at least do 10-90 and be, even if we got to beat a 10, because right now it feels like the split of attention is 0-100. Another issue that plagues the PvP in this game is the fact that at any moment a character can have 5+ instances of the same type of heal on them, allowing you to stack multiple heals over time. This leads the PvP zone of Cyrodiil being overran by what's known as ball groups and server stacking factions. The game has a huge separation of PvP and PvE player bases, and this divide is furthered even more when it comes time for patches, buffs, and nerfs. We'll see a set nerfed in PvP because of how it was overperforming in PvE and vice versa. PvP uses a system known as Battle Spirit, which is rarely utilized properly. A short summary of Battle Spirit is that it basically applies a debuff to your character when in PvP instances in an attempt to properly balance the PvP of the game. This includes lowering damage shield strength, lowering damage done, lowering health recovery, reducing healing done, and more. However, very rarely is this Battle Spirit debuff utilized to balance sets or skills to provide unique rule sets and requirements, such as when Battle Spirit is active, this set does this, or this is reduced by this, or you can't have 5 versions of this, and blah blah blah. Instead, sweeping changes are made, often resulting in the frustration of the PvP or PvE player base. I could go on, but these are the sentiments I often get in streams, community posts, Discord, and more. Like I said, I won't bore you with every update and every fact about the MMO, but here's a couple I feel is important for new players. ESO now has a total of 7 classes. You have the Nightblade, the Dragon Knight, the Templar, and the Sorcerer, then the 3 DLC classes, which are the Arcanist, Warden, and Necromancer. So you have a couple of options. The game has an abundant amount of sets, and even though there's over, I think, 600 of them or so, I don't know, you'll probably see about 30 in PvP. However, with the combination of sets, classes, and the champion point system that you start earning after level 50, there's a decent amount of build customization. The game, in my opinion, has made a lot of steps towards class balance, but it's still somewhat far from it, especially when you look at the neglect of the Necromancer class and compare it to something like the Nightblade, for instance. Despite the footage you may see in this video, please understand that it is unanimously agreed that this is the worst class, to the point it almost looks like the combat developers have a personal vendetta against the Necromancer. ESO has an optional subscription called ESO Plus with various benefits. It's almost not even optional, to be honest. It includes each DLC automatically, so you don't have to buy them individually, gives you crowns, it gives you in-store currency per month that you signed up for, and most importantly, it gives you the paywalled craft bag. To play this game without the craft bag is intentionally almost impossible. This provides players with a non-capped inventory for materials, and when you see how many different materials there are in this game, you'll wonder why ESO Plus is even optional. It's a very smart perk business-wise, and perhaps the reason most players have ESO Plus. I mean, it's a hell of a benefit. Though, do understand that ESO Plus does not include chapters, just DLC, which is an interesting logic, but not really unheard of in the MMO space. Also, ESO has the best versions of true endgames, which is fashion and housing. Though some of the houses are expensive in ESO, they are often generous with some giveaways or in-game ways to earn them, supposedly, so there's that. And as far as fashion, the game boasts among the best transmog and character customizations in the genre, though of course that is subject to personal opinion. The MMO is grindy for some of its skill lines, and some of them are so long and tedious that you will end up just purchasing the skill line for alternate characters rather than re-leveling them. And speaking of purchasing, I will not spend too much time on the Elder Scrolls Online monetization practices, while I do feel it is relevant for a 2024 review. I just think there's enough good videos on this. I'll summarize by saying that I am not a huge fan of the gambling, RNG crown crate loot boxes. It really sucks seeing something so cool that I want, like a polymorph, a mount, or a cosmetic, something that I admittingly and shamefully would be willing to purchase outright for like $25 plus or something ridiculously higher, but I just can't. I can't even spend a lot of money on this item. I instead have to gamble for it with the desire to want it and hopefully get ridiculously lucky for it. And I know a lot of you will bring up the crown gem system or the seal of endeavors, but to me it doesn't make it better, nor does it make it fair. I won't go into too much more detail like the purchasable vampire bites and vampire cures that are easily earnable in game, but hey, the MMO is not a Korean level pay to win or anything, so it does have that going for it. Although I would say that, pay to win is a stretch for ESO when it comes to a lot of systems, though maybe the latest chapter breaks that mold in some people's eyes. More on that shortly when we get to the Gold Road chapter. A lot of players critique the cash shop having all the cool stuff, all the shiny cosmetics, but I will give credit and say that Zenimax has vastly improved how they approach endgame rewards and earnable things, and also have been more generous with their daily login bonuses, so let's just say that's a step in the right direction, and it shows that they are starting to listen to the player base. Now let's get into the really recent / juicy stuff. Let's talk about the latest chapter of ESO, Gold Road, and conclude if this MMO is worth your time in 2024. The latest chapter, Gold Road, was perhaps the most game-changing thing to come to ESO aside from one Tamriel perhaps. In my opinion, it was the biggest addition to the game and brought a system I didn't think we'd ever get in ESO called scribing. Scribing, or spellcrafting as I'll refer to it as, is a really cool feature. You essentially are able to customize around 3 portions of new skills available, being able to change something to frost damage, to bleed damage, shock damage, or maybe you want to make it a stun, a pull, an immobilize, a heal, a damage over time, a heal over time. The options are vast to say the least. It gives build customization another tier and grants access to some insane buffs that some class kits may not have had access to otherwise. This system has been a very fun experience, and to be honest, has made PvP a lot more fun and enjoyable with my builds this patch. So what's the negative? Well, I personally believe something this game changing should have been base game. But obviously they are a company and need to make money, and this isn't exactly new in the MMO genre, right? To tie a feature to owning a new expansion. It's not even new to ESO for that matter. Essential things like jewelry crafting, transmuting, and more still paywalled technically and aren't even included in your ESO Plus subscription. My only critique was that the claims of scribing being horizontal progression. It is not horizontal progression. It quite frankly, factually, is not. Is it pay to win? I'll leave that up to you guys to debate, but we at best can say it's diagonal progression, right? The buffs and effects that these skills can do are actually game changing. Does this mean you're guaranteed to beat someone who doesn't own the chapter if you do own it? No. Do you need the new chapter to beat other content or players? No. Will a team of people with access to scribing do better than one without it at the same skill level? Probably so. Either way, I think the Gold Road chapter is great, and honestly, this chapter/patch has been the most fun I've had on ESO in a while. Even the storyline to progress the scribing skill line seemed phenomenal, and they had amazing voice acting we've come to expect from ESO. What is also another sign of progress from Zenimax is how convenient it is to level the skill line on another character if you've already done it on a different one, and you don't even have to pay in this scenario. Also, leveling the skill line/acquiring scribing didn't feel tedious at all. It was very well designed, quality of life progression. I noticed the little things Zenimax did to make it easier for the user. When a quest next step required me to port to an old zone, there was a portal already there waiting for me in the next room to take me to that zone. So in that case, if I hadn't been there before, it wouldn't be an annoying thing to get to that zone. I can't tell you how many times I was leveling Sijic, Mage's Guild, or Scrying and literally couldn't port to the zone because I had never been there on that character, and I didn't have a friend or guildie in that zone to travel to. Overall, I give the chapter a solid 9 out of 10, and honestly, that's just because it didn't include PvP content. I won't spoil any of the overland quests or the new trial for you, so don't worry. In fact, I hope you don't spoil it for me because I haven't done them. But in all seriousness, it's a really good chapter. And honestly, if you're considering being a returning player, I think if you own the chapter, it's a good time to return. Now, in conclusion, should you buy or play ESO in 2024? My answer is yes. ESO is perhaps my favorite MMO, and I'm not saying I played every MMO ever, nor am I saying it's the best. But there's something about it that you discover if you give it a chance, and why a lot always come back even after a long break. If you enjoyed the combat, you'll probably love it forever. And if you're more PvE and questing focused, then you probably have found the MMO of your dreams. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the outnumbered PvP B-roll footage in the background, and I thank you for listening. I think this was my first ESO review ever, and it means a lot to me no matter how much views it gets because it's based on about 10 years of knowledge and experience, and I'm just glad to have done it. I've seen almost disingenuous or misinformed reviews of players that were just stopping by or passing through solely because of a paid sponsorship, and it just never does the game justice nor provide enough honesty. I mean, come on, you can always tell from the background footage if they really played the game, right? But in all seriousness, if you made it this far, please like the video. Comment your thoughts on the state of ESO. I'll be sure to respond to everyone as soon as I can. This has just been my opinion, and I thank each of you for the support. Thank you to this awesome community we've built, and honestly, a huge part of it has been, of course, stemmed from The Elder Scrolls Online. Thank you to my channel members you see here on screen. Please consider subscribing or becoming a channel member. We do ESO streams here, and we await the MMO Ashes of Creation as well. Like the video if you made it this far. See you next time. It's been nice.